3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had never lost a war. Their crystalline warships cut through space like divine blades. Their plasma cannons could shatter moons, and their tactical algorithms had calculated victory in every engagement across 17 galaxies. When the Empire's scouts discovered a primitive species called humans on a small blue planet in the outer rim, the outcome seemed predetermined. Earth would fall in 72 hours, its people would be enslaved, and the Empire would claim another trophy world. But Admiral Thekvar had made one critical error in his calculations. He had assumed that desperation makes species predictable. He had never encountered a species that treated impossible odds not as a death sentence, but as a challenge to get creative. The human warship Defiance wasn't the largest vessel in the coming battle, nor the most advanced. In fact, by every metric the Empire used to measure military might, it shouldn't have posed any threat at all. But as Admiral Thekvar would soon discover, humans had a peculiar talent for rewriting the rules of warfare when their backs were against the wall. Some victories are won through superior firepower, others through tactical brilliance. But the rarest victories, the ones that echo through history and reshape the galaxy, are won by those mad enough to turn their greatest weakness into an unthinkable weapon. The Empire was about to learn why humanity had survived every extinction event their planet had thrown at them, and why, perhaps, they had been the ones throwing some of those events in the first place. The crystalline command deck of the Zephyrian dreadnought Eternal Dominion hummed with the soft blue glow of 1,000 tactical displays. Admiral Thekvar stood at the center of it all, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the holographic representation of the human solar system rotate slowly before him. His silver eyes evolved over millennia to see across 17 different spectrums of light, focused on the small blue planet that had caught the Empire's attention. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 47 worlds without losing a single battle. Subcommander Yilhan, her carapace still bearing the ceremonial scars of the Battle of Antares, stepped forward. "All fleet elements are in position, Admiral. 7 dreadnoughts, 23 cruisers, and 48 destroyer escorts. The humans have responded to our ultimatum with—" She paused, consulting her datapad. "What their translators indicate is a decline of our generous offer to surrender." Thekvar allowed himself what humans might have recognized as a smile, though his species expressed amusement by slowly rotating their shoulder plates. Predictable. Primitive species always choose the dramatic gesture over practical survival. "What is their fleet composition?" "That's where the situation becomes interesting, Admiral." Yilhan's mandibles clicked nervously. "Our long-range scanners detect only a single vessel approaching our position." The Admiral's shoulder plate stopped rotating. "One ship?" "Yes, sir. Designation appears to be U.S. Defiance. Our analysis suggests it's approximately 800 meters in length, with what appears to be primitive fusion drives and projectile-based weaponry. No energy shields detected. Hull appears to be composed of basic metallic alloys." Thekvar turned to face the tactical display showing their fleet's position near the edge of the solar system. 78 ships of the line, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash, faced off against a single human vessel that wouldn't have qualified as a destroyer escort in the Empire's navy. "Perhaps their military doctrine involves sacrificial gestures," suggested Subcommander Yilhan. "Many primitive species believe ritual combat honors their deities." "No." Admiral Thekvar moved closer to the display, his analytical mind turning over the possibilities. "I've studied their historical records. Humans are survivors. They don't waste resources on empty gestures. This single ship means something." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to the human vessel. Visual channel." The main display flickered and resolved into the image of a human command bridge. Thekvar had seen humans in the cultural databases, but this was his first real-time contact with the species. The human commander was smaller than expected, wearing a dark blue uniform that looked almost ceremonial in its simplicity. Most surprising was that the apparent leader appeared to be female, though Thekvar knew human gender roles differed from Empire standards. "This is Admiral Thekvar of the Zephyrian Empire. To whom am I speaking?" "Captain Sarah Chen, United Earth Navy." Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "I assume you're here about our response to your surrender demand?"
"Indeed."
"I confess puzzlement at your tactical decision. Our fleet analysis indicates you face impossible odds. Perhaps your leadership doesn't understand the situation's severity?" Captain Chen smiled, and Thekvar noticed it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, we understand perfectly. 7 dreadnoughts, 23 cruisers, 48 destroyers. Approximately 15,000 crew members total. Combined firepower equivalent to about 6,000 of our nuclear weapons. Did I miss anything? The accuracy of her assessment surprised him. You seem well informed. This makes your decision even more curious. Do you expect reinforcements? No reinforcements coming, she replied. It's just us. Then I must ask the obvious question, Captain Chen. What could one ship possibly accomplish against an entire fleet? Her smile widened slightly. You know, Admiral, that's exactly what my great-great-grandmother asked when she flew her fighter plane against a battleship in something we called World War II. Turned out she was asking the wrong question. And what would the correct question be? Not what one ship can accomplish. Captain Chen leaned forward in her command chair. But what one crew is willing to sacrifice to buy their people time. Admiral Thekvar felt a momentary shift in his confidence. Something in the human's tone suggested knowledge he didn't possess. Time for what, Captain? You've studied our history, haven't you? All those wars, those disasters, those times when everything seemed hopeless. Her expression grew more serious. Did you notice the pattern? Humans don't just survive extinction events, Admiral. We learn from them. The communication channel closed, leaving the Zephyrian command bridge in silence. Sub-Commander Yilhan was the first to speak. Admiral, our tactical computers show no possible scenario where a single human ship could threaten our fleet. Their technology is simply too primitive. Thekvar studied the display showing the approaching human vessel. Something nagged at his strategic instincts developed over decades of conquest. What do we know about this ship specifically? According to our intelligence gathering, the Defiance was originally constructed as a deep space exploration vessel. It was retrofitted for military service when our advanced scouts were detected in their outer system. Crew complement appears to be approximately 400 humans. Exploration vessel, he murmured. Why send an exploration ship to fight a war? His tactical officer, Commander Zephyrin, looked up from his station. Perhaps it was simply the only ship available? Our arrival timeline may have caught them unprepared, but Admiral Thekvar had conquered too many worlds to accept simple explanations. Access our cultural database on human conflict history. I want to understand their tactical thinking. The next several minutes passed in relative quiet as the human ship continued its approach. At its current speed, intercept would occur in approximately 2 hours. Plenty of time for the Empire's computers to calculate firing solutions and plan the most efficient way to disable the vessel for capture and study. Admiral, Commander Zephyrin called out, cultural analysis is complete. Humans appear to favor what they call asymmetrical warfare when facing superior opposition. Their history includes numerous examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics. Elaborate. They seem particularly fond of what they term Pyrrhic victories and last stands, occasions where they accept certain death in exchange for inflicting maximum damage on their opponents. The psychological impact appears to be as important as the tactical results. Sub-Commander Yilhan interjected. Surely they understand that symbolic victories won't save their planet. Even if they manage to damage one of our ships, we still possess overwhelming force superiority.
Admiral Thekvar was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical display.
Unless the symbolic victory isn't the goal. He turned to his communications officer. I want continuous scanning of the human ship. Every spectrum, every frequency. If they're planning something unexpected, I want to know about it. Yes, sir. Shall I order the fleet to attack formation? Not yet. Let them approach. I want to see what 400 humans think they can accomplish against the might of the Empire. As if responding to his words, the tactical display showed the Defiance beginning to accelerate, its fusion drives burning brighter as it closed the distance to the Zephyrian fleet. Thekvar watched the approach with growing curiosity rather than concern. No known human technology could threaten his ships, and yet, Admiral, the sensor operator called out, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessel. Some kind of massive power build-up, but not in their weapons systems. Where? That's the strange part, sir. The energy is building in their cargo holds. Thekvar felt the first stirring of genuine uncertainty. What could they possibly be carrying that requires that much power? Unknown, sir. The readings are unlike anything in our database. On the tactical display, the Defiance was now only 30 minutes from weapons range. Standard Imperial doctrine called for demanding surrender once more, then opening fire if refused. But Admiral Thekvar found himself hesitating. 3,000 years of unbroken victory had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, Every instinct was telling him that something was fundamentally wrong with this scenario. Sir? Sub-Commander Yilhan was waiting for orders. Maintain current position. Continue scanning. Do not engage until I give the order. Admiral, if we allow them to close to point-blank range, they will die uselessly against our shields. Thekvar finished. But I want to understand what they think they're accomplishing first. As the human ship drew closer, the Admiral found himself thinking about Captain Chen's words. What one crew is willing to sacrifice to buy their people time? Time for what? What could Earth possibly be doing that required time purchased with the lives of 400 volunteers? The answer, he suspected, would rewrite everything he thought he knew about humanity, and possibly everything he thought he knew about war itself. On the main display, the Defiance continued its steady approach, its hull gleaming in the light of the distant sun. 400 humans flying straight into the heart of an enemy fleet that could destroy continents. Admiral Thekvar couldn't decide if he was looking at the bravest sight he'd ever witnessed or the most terrifying. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the Zephyrian fleet grow larger on the main display. Each enemy ship was a masterpiece of engineering that represented technology centuries beyond anything humanity had achieved. Their crystalline hulls sparkled like jewels against the black of space, and she knew that any one of those vessels could reduce Earth's cities to rubble in a matter of hours. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Morrison from the engineering station, "the reaction is stabilizing. Dr. Yamamoto says we're approaching optimal containment pressure. Time to weapons range?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer down to the second. 14 minutes, Captain. She nodded calmly, though inside her mind was racing through the calculations one more time. Everything had to be perfect. They wouldn't get a second chance at this, and if they failed, Earth would fall within days of the Empire's arrival in the inner system. Commander Torres, her executive officer, approached with the latest status report. "All departments report ready, Captain." Dr. Yamamoto confirms the cargo bay modifications are holding. The containment field is stable, and the reaction mass is responding to the magnetic guidance systems. Any word from Earth Command? Last transmission confirms the evacuation transports cleared Luna's orbit 6 hours ago. The deep space colonies have been notified and are implementing the dispersal protocols. If we fail here today, at least some of humanity will survive to carry on. Chen allowed herself a small smile. "We're not going to fail, Marcus. We're going to do exactly what humans do best." Which is? Improvise. The bridge crew had been handpicked for this mission, each one a volunteer who understood they were flying into certain death. Chen looked around at their faces, seeing determination mixed with the natural fear that any rational person would feel facing impossible odds. These weren't superhuman warriors or fanatic zealots. They were ordinary people who had stepped forward when their species needed someone to buy time with their lives. Dr. Elizabeth Yamamoto's voice crackled over the intercom from the cargo bay. "Captain, we're approaching critical mass. Once we pass the threshold, there's no turning back." "Understood, Doctor. How long until the reaction becomes self-sustaining?" "At current energy input, approximately 8 minutes. After that, even if we lose all power to the containment system, we'll have roughly 40 minutes before cascade failure." Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Kim, what's our status on the Empire's response?" "They're maintaining formation but haven't opened fire yet. Long-range scans show they're studying us pretty intensely. I think we've got them curious." "Good. Curiosity killed the cat, as they say." Chen opened a channel to the engineering deck. "Chief Patterson, how are our engines holding up?" "Running hot but stable, Captain. These old fusion drives weren't designed for the kind of power we're pushing through them, but they'll last long enough." Long enough. Such a simple phrase that carried the weight of Earth's survival. Everything they were doing was calculated to last just long enough to complete their mission. The ship, the crew, the desperate plan they were executing, none of it was meant to survive the next hour. "Captain," Commander Torres said quietly, "are you sure about this? Even if everything works perfectly, there's still a chance." "No, Marcus." Chen's voice was firm. "We've run the simulations 100 times. Yamamoto's calculations are solid. The only variable is whether we can get close enough before they figure out what we're planning." On the main display, the Zephyrian fleet loomed larger with each passing second. Chen could make out details on the nearest ships now. The elegant curves of their hulls, the weapon ports that could unleash devastation beyond human comprehension, the graceful way they moved through space as if dancing rather than positioning for battle. Beautiful ships, she thought. It was almost a shame they belonged to a species that viewed humanity as nothing more than another resource to be harvested. Ma'am, we're receiving another transmission from the flagship. Put it through. Admiral Thekvar's alien features appeared on the screen again. His silver eyes seemed to be studying her, with what she could only interpret as scientific curiosity. Captain Chen, I must confess your approach has captured my attention. My tactical computers indicate you're flying directly toward the center of our formation, with no apparent plan for evasion or attack. That's correct, Admiral. I find myself wondering if this is some form of religious ceremony among your people. A ritualistic sacrifice to appease your deities? Chen laughed, and she could see the alien's surprise at her reaction. No, Admiral, we don't believe in deities. This is pure pragmatism. Pragmatism? I fail to see how the death of 400 humans serves any practical purpose. You know what I find interesting about your empire, Admiral Thekvar? In 3,000 years of conquest, you've never faced a species that was willing to treat their own extinction as a strategic option. The alien was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his tone had changed subtly. Explain. Chen stood and walked closer to the screen. Your entire military doctrine is based on the assumption that your enemies want to survive. All your tactics, all your strategies, they're designed to exploit that basic instinct for self-preservation. But what happens when you face an opponent who views survival as secondary to mission completion? They die, Admiral Thekvar said simply.
Yes, Chen agreed.
But the question is, what do they accomplish in the process of dying? The communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. 6 minutes to weapons range, Lieutenant Kim reported. Chen returned to her captain's chair and activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. We are approaching the point of no return. In a few minutes, we'll cross into the enemy's effective weapons range, and there will be no possibility of retreat or escape. Each of you volunteered for this mission knowing what it would cost. I want you to know that what we accomplish here today will be remembered for as long as humans exist anywhere in the galaxy. She paused, looking around the bridge at the crew who would die alongside her. Dr. Yamamoto, initiate final sequence. Aye, Captain. Beginning final reaction cascade. All departments prepare for massive energy discharge. The ship began to vibrate as the reaction in the cargo bay built toward critical mass. Chen felt the vibration through the deck plates, a physical reminder of the forces they were barely containing. In the cargo bay, matter and antimatter were dancing together in carefully controlled quantities, held apart by magnetic fields that required more power than most planets generated. Captain, Commander Torres said. External temperature is rising. The hull is beginning to glow. On the main display, Chen could see that the Defiance now looked like a small star approaching the Zephyrian fleet. The heat signature alone had to be triggering every alarm in the enemy ship's sensor arrays. Ma'am, the Empire ships are beginning to move. I think they're finally taking us seriously. Too late, Chen said with satisfaction. Dr. Yamamoto, confirm we've passed the point of no return. The reaction is now self-sustaining. Total cascade in 37 minutes. Chen opened the channel to Admiral Thekvar one last time. Admiral, you ask what one crew could accomplish against an entire fleet. The alien's image appeared on screen, and she could see alarm in his inhuman features. What have you done? Something my species learned from our own history, Admiral. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make sure your enemy can't enjoy their victory. She smiled. We call it a Pyrrhic victory. Look it up in your cultural database. You're bluffing. No species would deliberately, Admiral, in approximately 35 minutes, this ship is going to undergo complete matter-antimatter annihilation. The yield will be equivalent to roughly 50,000 nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. Your fleet is currently positioned within the primary blast radius. The alien's silver eyes widened in what Chen recognized as the universal expression of someone realizing they had made a terrible mistake. That's impossible. No species possesses the technology to contain that much antimatter. You're right, Chen agreed cheerfully. We don't. We're not trying to contain it. We're trying to release it in the most effective way possible. She could see the alien frantically gesturing to officers outside the camera view. Admiral, you have approximately 30 minutes to get your fleet outside the blast radius. I'd suggest you start moving now. Even your advanced ships will need every second of that time. The communication cut off as the Zephyrian fleet erupted into chaotic motion. Ships that had been gracefully holding formation suddenly burst into desperate flight, their engines burning at maximum power as they raced to escape the expanding sphere of destruction that the Defiance carried at its heart. Think they'll make it? Commander Torres asked. Chen studied the tactical display, watching the elegant alien ships fleeing in all directions. The smaller ships might. Maybe half the cruisers. The dreadnoughts? She shook her head. Too massive, too slow. They'll never reach safe distance in time. Around them, the ship's hull was beginning to glow cherry red as the barely contained energies in the cargo bay pushed the containment system beyond its design limits. Chen looked around the bridge one last time, at the faces of the crew who had volunteered to die for a species they would never see again.
You know what the beautiful thing about this is,
she said to Commander Torres. What's that, Captain? For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire is learning what it feels like to be afraid. Admiral Fekvar had commanded fleets for over 4 decades. He had overseen the conquest of 47 worlds, faced every conceivable form of resistance, and never once felt the cold touch of defeat. But as his flagship's engines strained to escape the expanding death that followed behind them, he experienced something entirely new in his long military career: terror. Engineering, I need more speed. He barked into his comm, his usual composure shattered. Admiral, we're already exceeding safe parameters by 40%. If we push the engines any harder, we risk complete system failure. Behind them, the human ship Defiance hung in space like a miniature sun, its hull now glowing white-hot, as barely contained energies built toward inevitable release. The thermal readings alone were breaking his sensors' measurement capabilities. Whatever the humans had done, they had turned their exploration vessel into the largest bomb ever created. Sub-Commander Yilhan's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. Admiral, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the fleet. Destroyers Silverwing and Starpiercer report successful escape trajectory. Cruiser Voidhunter has engine failure and is requesting assistance. Leave them, Thekvar ordered without hesitation. Any ship that can't maintain escape velocity on its own is already dead. The brutal calculus of survival had replaced 3 millennia of Imperial doctrine in a matter of minutes. Ships that had fought together for centuries were abandoning each other as each captain focused solely on getting their vessel beyond the blast radius before the human bomb detonated. Sir, communication from the Void Hunter. Captain Moradin is requesting immediate evacuation for his crew. Thekvar closed his eyes for a moment. Captain Morden had served under him for 15 years. They had conquered 6 worlds together. But there wasn't time for sentiment or honor now. Negative. All ships maintain current heading and maximum acceleration. No exceptions. On the main tactical display, he watched the spreading chaos of his once perfect fleet formation. Ships scattered in all directions like startled prey animals, their elegant crystalline hulls straining against forces they were never designed to withstand. The sight would have been humiliating if it weren't so utterly necessary for survival.
Admiral, his communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Put it through.
Captain Chen's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Thekvar could see the human bridge bathed in an ominous red glow. Sparks flew from control panels as the ship's system struggled to contain forces that should have been impossible to generate with their primitive technology. Admiral, I wanted to check in on your evacuation progress. You have approximately 18 minutes before we reach cascade failure. Why? Thekvar demanded. Why are you doing this? Your ship will be destroyed, your crew will die. Your planet will still fall to the Empire when our reinforcements arrive. Captain Chen smiled, and Thekvar was disturbed to see that she looked almost peaceful. Will it, though? Your reinforcements won't arrive for another 6 months. That's a lot of time for humanity to prepare, especially now that we know your ships can be destroyed. You're sacrificing 400 lives to buy 6 months? No, Admiral. We're sacrificing 400 lives to prove a point. For 3,000 years, your empire has conquered species that fought to survive. Today, you're learning what happens when you face a species that fights to win, regardless of the cost. The transmission flickered as another power surge ran through the human ship. When the image stabilized, Chen was consulting a handheld device. 17 minutes now, Admiral. I hope your engines are running smoothly. Despite the terror of his situation, Thekvar found himself compelled to ask, how? How did your species develop antimatter weaponry? Our intelligence indicated you had barely achieved fusion power. We didn't develop it, Chen replied calmly. We improvised it. Dr. Yamamoto figured out how to convert our deep space fuel supply into a crude antimatter reaction using the ship's fusion reactors as catalysts. Took her about 6 weeks to work out the math. That's impossible. The containment requirements alone. Admiral, we're not trying to contain it permanently. Just long enough to deliver it to your fleet. Sometimes the difference between impossible and inevitable is just a matter of perspective. Thekvar felt something shift in his understanding of these creatures. You're all insane. Maybe, but we're effectively insane. The results speak for themselves. Chen's expression grew more serious. Admiral, there's something else you should know. This mission is being broadcast live to every human colony in known space. They're watching us right now, learning that the mighty Zephyrian Empire can be forced to flee from a single human ship. The strategic implications hit him like a physical blow. You're creating martyrs. We're creating a legend. Every species you've conquered over the past 3 millennia is watching this too. They're seeing that the Empire's ships can burn just like anyone else's. On his tactical display, Thekvar could see they were approaching the theoretical minimum safe distance. But would it be enough? The human ship's energy output was still climbing, still pushing beyond every prediction his computers had made. Admiral, his navigation officer called out. At current acceleration, we should reach minimum safe distance with approximately 4 minutes to spare. Should reach. Might reach. The uncertainty was eating at him. In 40 years of military service, he had never found himself hoping for the competence of an enemy's weapons systems. Sir, we're receiving reports from the fleet. Current casualties, 3 dreadnoughts still within the blast radius and unable to reach safe distance. 9 cruisers in similar situations. Approximately 20 destroyer escorts. Over a third of his fleet. Gone in a matter of minutes. Not to superior firepower or brilliant tactics, but to the simple willingness of 400 humans to die for a strategic advantage. Message from Dreadnought Crystal Throne. Admiral, Captain Vexler requests permission to attempt a ramming attack on the human vessel. Thekvar considered it for a moment. If they could destabilize the human ship's containment system prematurely, it might reduce the blast yield enough for more ships to escape. But no, the energy readings indicated the reaction was already self-sustaining. Ramming wouldn't stop it, only guarantee another ship's destruction. Negative. All ships maintain escape trajectories. On the screen, Captain Chen was consulting her handheld device again. 15 minutes, Admiral. You know, I'm curious about something. In all your military histories, have you ever recorded a strategic withdrawal from inferior forces? The question stung because the answer was no. The Empire had never retreated from a weaker enemy. It simply hadn't been conceivable. This is not a retreat, Thekvar said stiffly. This is tactical repositioning to avoid unnecessary losses. Chen's laugh was genuinely amused. Admiral, you're running for your lives from a single ship crewed by a species you consider primitive. What would you call that? Before he could answer, alarms began blaring throughout his command center. Admiral, massive energy spike from the human vessel. Their containment system is beginning to fail ahead of schedule. On the visual display, the Defiance was now so bright it hurt to look at directly. The ship's hull was beginning to warp and buckle under the enormous forces contained within. Pieces of the superstructure were breaking away, trailing fire as they spun into space. Time to cascade failure? 8 minutes, sir. Less if the containment system collapses completely. Thekvar turned to his engineering station. I need everything you can give me. Reroute power from life support if necessary. Admiral. Captain Chen's voice cut through the chaos. Just wanted to say, it's been an honor meeting you. You seem like a decent being, for a conqueror. I hope you survive what's coming. What's coming? The lesson, Admiral. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity doesn't lose wars. We just changed the rules until we're playing a game we can win. The transmission ended as the human ship finally began to come apart. Chunks of hull plating broke away in brilliant streaks of fire, and through the gaps Thekvar could see the terrible light of barely contained annihilation. All ships, emergency acceleration. Now. The Eternal Dominion leaped forward, as every system was pushed beyond its design limits. Around them, the surviving ships of the Zephyrian fleet fled in desperate haste from the expanding ball of fire that had once been an exploration vessel. 6 minutes to minimum safe distance, his navigator reported. 5 minutes until estimated detonation. 1 minute. 1 minute would determine whether Admiral Thekvar died in the greatest military disaster in Imperial history or lived to report the emergence of a threat unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Behind them, the Defiance finally reached the point of no return. The ship's structure collapsed entirely, releasing forces that had been building for the past hour. For a brief moment, a new star blazed in the darkness between worlds. The shockwave, when it came, was visible across half the solar system. It swept outward at the speed of light, carrying with it the vaporized remains of the human ship and everyone aboard. The blast was so intense that it temporarily overwhelmed the sensors on every ship in the fleet. When the readings cleared, Admiral Thekvar found himself looking at empty space where 32 ships of the Imperial fleet had been only moments before. No debris, no survivors, no trace that they had ever existed. Simply gone, erased by the fury of human desperation turned into a weapon. Casualty report. he ordered quietly. Confirmed losses, 3 dreadnoughts, 9 cruisers, 20 destroyer escorts. Total crew casualties, approximately 43,000 Imperial personnel. In a single engagement, humanity had inflicted more casualties on the Empire than the previous 50 conquests combined. And they had done it with a converted exploration ship and the willingness to die for a strategic advantage. Sub-Commander Yilhan approached hesitantly. "Admiral, what are your orders? Should we proceed to Earth and carry out the invasion?" Thekvar looked at the tactical display showing his reduced fleet. Still formidable by most standards, but now facing an enemy that had proven they would sacrifice anything to avoid defeat. "No," he said finally. "Signal all ships. We're returning to Imperial space." "Sir?" "Yilhan, what we witnessed here today changes everything. We need to report to High Command that we've encountered a species that views extinction as a tactical option. The implications of that are beyond our current strategic framework." As his flagship turned away from Earth's solar system, Admiral Thekvar found himself thinking about Captain Chen's final words. "Humanity doesn't lose wars, they just change the rules." Looking at the empty space where a third of his fleet had died, he was beginning to understand what she meant. The Zephyrian Empire had spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of warfare against species that wanted to survive. They had never learned to fight against species that wanted to win more than they wanted to live. And somewhere in the depths of space, human colonies were receiving the transmission of the Defiance's final mission. 43,000 Imperial dead. A third of a fleet destroyed by a single converted exploration ship. The message was clear. The Empire could be hurt. The Empire could be beaten. And if 400 humans with an improvised antimatter bomb could accomplish this much, what could the entire species achieve when they put their minds to it? Admiral Thekvar had come to Earth expecting an easy victory and another trophy world. Instead, he was returning to Imperial space with news that would shake the foundations of the Empire itself. Humanity had officially announced their arrival on the galactic stage, and they had done it with the kind of dramatic flair that would be remembered for millennia. The war for Earth was over. The war for the galaxy had just begun.